Hey everyone, and welcome to my first ever Q&A video. I'm super keen to get started, but first, cue the intro. So I'm sure some of you guys had no idea that I was making a Q&A video, and that's because I actually posted about it in the community section of my YouTube channel, and I know not everyone has the time to read through those, but just letting you know that I do post quite a bit there, and if you want to see what I'm up to and my most recent updates, you can check that out. If you guys don't currently follow me, you can check out my page at dave.sogiono. I post a bunch of cool motion design work there, mostly my shorter clips that don't actually make it to YouTube. So without further ado, let's jump straight into these questions. First up, we have a question by Kirk Melton who asks, how's Unknown Waters 2 going? Well, Kirk, it's going great. I just upgraded my CPU to the Ryzen 3900X, which has an extra 4 cores in my previous Ryzen 2700X. So my renders are almost cut in half, which has been so beneficial for working on it, and it's just a massive time saver as well. But in terms of the overall scope of the film, I already modeled and rigged basically all of the scenes, and I'm just working on really polishing and finalizing each and every shot to make sure it meets the quality and standard that I'm after. Our second question comes from Ike Ranver7 who asks, have any of your family members seen Unknown Waters? Well, Ike, Unknown Waters was actually my HSC major work for high school, and basically that means my mum and dad would see me working on that late at night, and they'd ask me what I was making, and I'd say, hey, this is for school. But it wasn't until our fusion night, which is basically our school's concert showcasing all of the high school major works, that my parents actually saw the completed film for the first time. And that was a night that I'll never forget. I dressed up in like a full suit, and it was pretty much almost like a movie premiere. And it was really awesome because it was in a massive theater with surround sound and a massive screen, and it almost brought me to tears just knowing that all of my hard work and effort that I've put in paid off. So our third question comes from Jack Scrivener, sorry if I got that wrong, who asks, will you ever do a live stream while you work? It's definitely something that I'm looking at doing for future projects as well. However, I might be doing some tutorials after the film's released, just breaking down some of these shots. Okay, PSVR Jack asks, in Unknown Waters, how did you get the Deep Grand Reef, Creep Vine Forest, and Safe Shallows? Did you make them? Also, what did you use to animate the ship? So Jack, I actually did create everything from scratch for this film. In terms of how I actually went about creating it for the Deep Grand Reef, basically a bunch of landscapes that I sculpted, added a bunch of clones as well for the vegetation. I actually used a sphere for the base of the bulb, I think that's what they're called, and then cloned 4 pillars around it. For the creep vines, I used a spline from top to bottom, and then cloned a bunch of leaves onto that using Cinema 4D's hair instancing with an object as well, and then I would animate that using noises. The Safe Shallows were actually really fun to make because I got to create tons of corals and different little bits and pieces, as well as the Peeper model, which is super cute, and I basically created that using the texture and just projecting it onto some geometry that I modeled. As for animating the ship, that was along a spline, so basically Cinema 4D has this feature where you can animate an object along a path, and basically I did that and also aligned the tangential rotation of it so that it would follow the path exactly. And then to that, I would add some external keyframes such as rotation, banking. Next up, we have a question from Nicholas Relf who asks, will you be continuing the little side story from part 1, maybe some lore, or maybe even another possible survivor? Well, Nick, I don't want to spoil anything for you, but basically Unknown Waters 2 is a continuation of the story of part 1 and follows some of the in-game events from both Below Zero and the first game. Not too much of Below Zero's in there because I just wanted to keep it super aesthetic and not really dive into the lore of that game because obviously it hasn't come out yet and I don't want to ruin the experience of that for those who haven't played it yet. Kyle Sander asks, how many hours would you say in the making of Sonardica fan film, and were you ever in the situation where you wanted to give up? Kyle, that's an awesome question. I'd say I worked about 3 to 5 hours per night during the 9 months that I had to create the film. And this was super difficult for me because I was already super tired from school, the long days, and also other activities outside of school. So it was very difficult to stay disciplined. But looking back on it now, I'm super glad I did, and it definitely paid off. Daniel Hung asks, what inspired you to become a visual effects artist, and what do you want to be when you're older? As a kid, I remember watching Corridor Digital and Rocket Jump, those guys are massive inspirations for me. If you remember Video Game High School, I remember watching that while I was supposed to be studying for Year 5 exams. Don't tell my parents. But also guys like Film Riot, I've really looked up to them as well. I can't forget movies like Tron Legacy. That blew my mind watching that on the bus ride to camp. And I do remember actually creating some of my own Tron Legacy animations. I might actually show you a few here. They are pretty terrible if I'm gonna admit to myself. But as a kid, I thought they were pretty cool and they were super fun to do, and I wouldn't be here without the experience that I learned through making these animations. As for what I want to be when I'm older, I want to be a 3D motion designer, which means I'll be working on a variety of stuff ranging from films and movies to commercials and ads, and really just the list goes on. There's so much potential in motion design and I'm really looking forward to that. Goalie for Life asks, will you do any other games besides Sonardica? I love that game, but it'd be super cool to see where your creativity takes you with another game. Being utterly honest, and this is really sad for me to say, but I think that Unknown Waters 2 will be the last entry for me into the Sonardica universe. It's been super good and it's been really great working on these two films, but I really do think it is time for me to move on with other projects after this. And I'm definitely looking at stuff like Spider-Man as inspiration, Tron Legacy as I said, but also some original projects that I'd like to come up with as well. And so yeah, the future is definitely looking bright and I'm really keen to see what I'll be creating in the future. Catherine Ivanov asks, have you ever wanted to make the Leviathans like Ghost Leviathans, Reaper Leviathans as giant puppets to animate, or is animating them more simpler? I don't even know how I would make a Reaper Leviathan puppet. Number one, I wouldn't really want that around because it'd be terrifying. But number two, I don't know how I could make that look realistic and fit in with all of these CG elements. Nordic Gamer asks, what programs do you use to create your videos? I use Cinema 4D for my main 3D work, After Effects for all of my compositing, Substance Painter for my material and texturing, Premiere Pro for my final edits, and Adobe Audition for all of my sound. Nick White asks, have you got any major projects planned? Not at the moment after Subnautica Part 2. I'm just really keen to work on a bunch of smaller projects and just really fine tune my craft and get better at what I do. Shoy Yinkan asks, are you gonna revisit Faded with another drum cover? Probably not, being honest, but I'm not ruling it out. Maybe at a significant milestone, I might do something special like that. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of this video. I'd like to thank all of you guys who submitted a question. I really do appreciate it. And for those of you who didn't manage to get a question in on time, you can just leave it in that same community post, and I might actually be doing another one of these in the near future. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and a comment down below. And as always, if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. It really does help support my channel, and it means you guys don't miss out on any of the awesome content that I'll be bringing out in the future. Until next time guys, stay safe and take care.